Hey everyone, AngryHoneyBadger here, and welcome to my first tier list. This is for patch 5.17 or 5.17. This tier list will be a little bit longer because there's going to be an intro to explain all of this, deal to the placing, my background, and such. So, after hearing the opinions of the community and being asked a lot to myself, like especially when I'm streaming about powerful picks, I've decided to come up with this tier list to help anybody looking to know anything more about champions, whether they want to learn from them, enhance their game knowledge, or whatever it may be. This list is a little bit of everything when it comes to a champion and how they're placed. A little bit of win rate in solo queue, a little bit from competitive play and international, a little bit about the meta and how items and comps and a few other criteria in league. So it kind of takes all that together, not just win rate purely, not just competitive purely, but all those things together that just kind of make the champion what they are and how they should be seen. I've also gone over this list with some play testers and kind of want to see what they thought, where they thought the list was at, if they thought it was good. And overall, we're on par with most things. Only a few little differences that I'm going to talk about in the list. Overall, we want to shape this to be a very comprehensive list. How ranking works is there's 6 tiers. Champions are placed into a tier, and then within that tier, the order in which they are indicates their strength within the tier. Obviously, champions that are in the same tier are going to be close just because they're all in the same tier. That's kind of why they're all there. So, but there's still a little bit of power within the tier they're in. As a disclaimer, if a champion is placed lower or higher than where you think they should be, I'm willing to address this down below in the comments, but please be civil about this. If you do just rage about it, you're just going to be ignored. So if you have something constructive to say, cool. If you have rage, it's going to be ignored. Go do it elsewhere. Nobody's here for that. As for the rankings, I'm going to go over each tier just very briefly. I'm going to talk about a couple champions within that tier to discuss. And like I said, if you have questions about why certain champions are there, that's what the comments are for down below. We'll discuss it then. You're more than welcome to share this with any of your friends, talk about this with the community, give feedback, and let's shape this list for future videos, and let's make it the best we can. But for now, let's start with the S tier. So the God tier is the best of the best. This is S tier. This is God mode. This is where we want to be. So in this list, I'm not going to read all the champions. You can read them right there. They're on the screen. I'm going to talk about 2 of them. I'm going to talk about Azir, and I'm going to talk about Mordekaiser. Let's start out with Azir. So Azir did see changes in patch 5.17. Significant nerf? Slightly. Has it ruined him as a champion? I disagree if you think it has. He's still a very strong champion. He still has this power. Obviously, it was a nerf, but he still ramps into late game really, really well. And actually, the initial changes we saw with his whole cooldown being moved from his passive actually made him a stronger champion because of the way they had him scale. So Azir still finds himself in S tier. He's not the highest of the high, and although I would have put him there, obviously in the last patch, I would have put him at the very top. He falls behind a couple others now, but Azir's still a very strong champion, but it's a skill thing, obviously. Like, the ceiling is only as high as you make it with Azir. And then as for the next one, that's Mordekaiser. I'm going to talk about him. Now, Mordekaiser finds himself in the God tier in the ADC position. We've seen him a lot down there, and we know he's strong down there. His win rate as an ADC is the highest right now, even though he's not technically an ADC, but whatever. In the other lanes he plays in, he'd be down in like C tier and D tier when we get to those. But I'm ranking champions in the tier I think they fit the highest in for that position. So if you see Mordekaiser up here as an ADC, I think he's right now best as an ADC in God tier. You won't see him anywhere else on the list, even though he can be played mid and top, but I put the champion the highest. So just a reference for later on down the list, if you see like Lissandra and be like, well, I play her mid, well, I think she's best as a top laner in B tier. We'll get to that later, though. Anyways, Mordekaiser's great. He's going to probably see a little bit of power moved out of him in the next patch in the bot lane, but I think they're going to be fixing that from PvE testing so far, with having him be able to self-cast his W. Right now, he's terrible in solo lanes, but he's good in the bot lane. He's not unstoppable. There are ways to play around him, but he is very good, and he is a top pick right now if you can play him. So Mordekaiser's going to find himself up here for a little while until we see some changes come to the game. As for our next tier, this is going to be the A tier. This is a high tier. These are great champions. We see these champions in competitive play a lot. So if in this tier of champions, I'm going to talk about Fiora and Kalista. So Fiora, when she first came out, I actually talked a lot of crap about Fiora because I thought she was awful. And you know what? I was right. She was awful. She was so awful that she got hot buffed like crazy across her entire board mostly. A lot of base stat stuff, but a lot of very important base stat stuff that made her a lot better. And even just a lot of stuff. Really, she just got crazy buffed. Anyways, it made her a lot better. We've seen her in some competitive play now too. She's wrecked. We've also probably just seen her wrecking now too. It wasn't even the part where people need to get used to her kit. It was the whole, she was just bad. Now she's a lot better. I personally don't like her new kit. I think she also just looks stupid as a champion now. I liked her old style more. And her running animation is still stupid. But besides that, she's a very good champion right now. So she finds herself way higher due to her hot buff. We'll see what they do with her in the future. But for now, she's going to be a very high pick and maybe even contested quite a bit in competitive play. And then next we have Kalista. Kalista did get nerfed this patch, and I think it was pretty impactful. One of the discussions I had with a Rioter was that she should be still in S tier. I disagree. I still hold her highly. Obviously, A tier's a great place to be, but she's fallen down a little bit, and I think I want to see a little bit more play with her. And the average person honestly doesn't play Kalista that well. Not that this is only just for the average player, but I take some of this all into consideration. She's still okay. Obviously, we're in the A tier. This is great, but she's not S tier anymore. The nerfs come in and they hit her in pretty good spots to bring her down a peg. So look out for that if you are looking to play her. Next, we have the B tier. This is a good tier to still be in. These are still viable and still competitive champions, just not the high tier, not A tier. This is just the B tier, okay? Who we're going to talk about in this tier are going to be Lux and Trundle. Now, let's kick things off with Lux. Lux did see some changes, some helpful changes, and some changes she honestly should have had a long time ago. Despite that, some people think she could be a little higher. Some people might think she could be a little bit lower. I think she's okay right here for now. The biggest problem with Lux that keeps her, at least in this tier for now, that won't take her any higher, in my opinion, is her cooldowns are a little bit too long. And that is a big thing. I know, obviously not on her ultimate, that's on a pretty short cooldown, but it's a big thing when you miss one ability. You have to stand around a team fight for quite a bit of time before you can really do any really impactful damage. So that's one of the big problems. The other problem is if she doesn't do well in lane, she falls a little bit behind, she is completely irrelevant. There's not a lot of damage to be found. If she falls off the curve, she falls really hard. It's just how Lux is. If you get really ahead, she does great. I mean, snowballing on any champion's a good thing, but Lux really hits it really badly if she falls behind. So it's unfortunate for her. She'll sit here for now. Then also in B tiers, maybe a champion a lot of people wouldn't think about being here, and that's Support Trundle. This is way better than people give it recognition for, and I know that we've seen it a little bit. Yellowstar showed it to us. It was great. We loved it. The thing is, he has a bad early game. Yes, no one's denying that. Luckily, his passive helps him survive all the poke and harass he might receive. But there's a new king of the bot lane called Mordekaiser, and Trundle Mordekaiser is a real thing, and it is really strong. Not saying that Mordekaiser's dragging Trundle up into the B tier, but Trundle's just something people aren't thinking about, and they might want to. It's really good. I made a build about it. Check it out. It's super fun. He's super awesome there. And yeah, he's good right now. If you've been underestimating him, you might want to try him out. In the C tier, this is our okay tier. It's lacking, but it could be worse. These are champions I could use a little bit of love, but they're overall still okay champions. The two I'm going to talk about are Sion and Anivia. Now, Sion, luckily for him, the way he's based as a champion, they took power out of him by nerfing him, but he still is impactful because he is such a beefy frontliner. This is why we've seen Quas still play him in the LCS. In fact, there's even a handful of champions in here that we've seen in the LCS, Hecarim, Ken, and Malphite, and even some other ones in here. They can still be viable when played correctly or utilized in certain team compositions, but overall they could use a little bit of help. They've seen nerfs a few of these champions, or some just have seen buffs to finally get up out of the very bottom of the list, but Sion's just a beefy tank. They took some of his power out of the lane. Still good, not bad. I like him as champion, fun to play, but he's going to sit here for now. Then we have Anivia. Anivia, in some cases, a lot of people should think is a lot higher. There's a big problem with Anivia, though. I know she can put down her big old frost field and slow everyone to the depths, but the current meta doesn't really play with everybody standing on top of each other in a giant snowbally snow field. It just doesn't work, so she can be really fed and be incredibly good at disengage and holding a siege and other things like that, but she can't capitalize too often on hard initiation. It's just her kit. She just doesn't do it. Like, in comparison, Victor can flash in and drop his Chaos Storm and shoot some lasers and do a ton of damage. You ever heard of an Anivia flashing in and dropping dropping the Circle of Death and then just, I mean, yeah, she can throw a couple abilities out, but it's typically not the same impact, as you can say. So it just doesn't fit. It's not the playstyle. So I find her to be down here for now. Little tweaks could make her better. She's also very squishy. She does have egg form, helps, but not fully. She's gonna sit here for now, unless I'm convinced otherwise. Finally, we've made it to the D tier. This is one from the bottom. This is the bad tier. These champions could need some help. Obviously though, little disclaimer, any champion can be viable if you're good with them and you get ahead. Just regardless, we all know this. We're gonna talk about Akali and Lucian. Two champions I actually really like, and it hurts me to put them here, but there's reasons for it. Akali is here's the biggest problem. Here's Akali in a nutshell. The meta doesn't fit her at all. Assassins kind of died out when we saw Cinderhulk. Cinderhulk's pretty dead though by now, but she still hasn't really come back to any viable position. Another big problem is the champions we've seen come out and the changes we've seen to champions don't help her in any single way. Makes her a little bit worse. Just not helpful for her. She's not in a great spot right now. Obviously, if you get super far ahead as Akali, I'm not going to tell you she's a bad champion. I like her a lot, but just right now, she doesn't fit, and it's unfortunate, but that's Akali. And then next is Lucian. A lot of people might be wondering why the hell he's way down here. I do have a reason, and I have some bad reasons too. Some good ones and some bad ones. You won't all like them, and that's fine. Let's all talk about it down below. Lucian was weak for a long time. He did see changes recently, and honestly, I think I'm going to be bringing him up the list. The problem is, I'm not convinced by them completely yet. There's still other ADCs out there. I don't think anybody's going to debate that. There are better ADCs. I would take a Jinx, a Corki, a Vayne, a Kalista, a Trist, a Sivir, and a Mord over Lucian currently right now in any game. I wouldn't even debate it. The problem with Lucian was when he came out, people thought he was bad. They were incredibly wrong. When he hit competitive play, he was incredibly good. He picked and banned constantly, and over time he saw nerfs. It eventually kind of ruined him, to be honest, and they're bringing some of it back over time. He will start rising, I promise you that, but for now, I'm going to put him down here. Like, I know it's slightly better now with the changes in the last 2 patches, but still, he just needs to be utilized better. And team comp-wise too, he's not perfect. There's better choices, so he's going to sit here for now. And finally, we're into the F tier. Now, the F tier, these champions are difficult to place, or they're just joke statuses. Champions that it's almost like Riot's forgotten about, or other reasons. I'm going to talk about each of them, but very briefly. So, right off the bat, you might notice Tahm Kench is off on the side. I don't know where he's supposed to be played. He's difficult to place. He's got a support kit, but he does the best in the jungle and in the top lane. It doesn't make any sense to me, and he still has a terrible ultimate that is hardly utilized in any great way. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm putting him as the difficult to place. I want to see more from him. I want to see more from competitive play. A lot of pros still won't even really touch him because they just find him very lackluster. So that's where he sits. As for the other ones, Poppy, we all know Poppy. We've seen Nightmare Poppies. We've also seen the Poppy that does absolutely nothing. Falls on the same page with Teemo. Teemo is also the exact same way. Teemo can be a nightmare if he gets a little bit ahead, but besides that, he doesn't do a damn thing. We have Zilean. The rework was smart, but I don't think it really landed him as a good support. Galio could be changed by just having a ranged basic attack, and I think that would help him out greatly, but he doesn't usually fit team comps, and his passive causes him to build wrong against AD teams, which is unfortunate, but it just kind of forces you to. Twitch, I think, is just bad right now. Twitch just is unfortunate as in ADC. We saw tweaks to make him better from Riot, but they're not enough in my opinion. And then finally we have Fiddlesticks. Jungle Fiddlesticks? Like, it sucks. You can't use the jungle item that's AP. It literally has no effect for him. He doesn't need to use it in any way or capacity. It's just not really a thing. So these champions, I hope they get some love. Tahm Kench, I hope I can figure out where he goes eventually. If you have an argument for that or where you think he might belong, I'm totally open to hearing any of your guys' opinions. So I will be reading the comments. Let me know. But that's the tier list. Here's the overall review of it. You can see it and read it now. Like I said, let me know what you guys think. A little bit of a long-winded video. The next one, let me know if you want it longer, shorter, or whatever. But yeah, this one I'm going to go with, and I'm sticking to my guns. There were very few things I really had to argue about with the few playtesters I talked to. One of them was mostly Lucian, and I understand he's probably a little lower than he really should be, but over time he got put down there, so he's coming back up from down there. So other than that, let me know what you guys think, and I hope the list helps, and I will see all of you guys next time.